In this video, I'm going to be taking you through 8 of the highest paying jobs you've probably never heard of. We'll be discussing what they are, what they do day to day, what qualifications you need to get the job, and most importantly, how much money they make. Sound good? Great. Let's dive in. First up on the list, this idiot's job. The nuclear reactor operator. As much as the Simpsons seem to be able to predict reality, some stuff they get blatantly wrong. And this is one of them. Because 1, an idiot like Homer most definitely could not handle this job. And 2, let's pretend he could, well then he'd probably be in a much bigger house. Because in reality, this is arguably one of the most exclusive blue-collar jobs in the world. So what do? Fundamentally, they're like a safety pilot. The same way airline pilots monitor the plane when it flies on autopilot, a nuclear reactor operator's primary job isn't to actively drive the plant every second, but to monitor its stability. So they're basically the human insurance policy. They sit in the control room, watching over cooling systems and turbines, ensuring the reactor remains within safe temperatures and pressure limits. What this means is 99% of the time, they're basically doing nothing. Just sitting there, watching the systems do their thing. But what they're really paid for is that 1% of the time when the shit hits the fan. When a pump fails, or a sensor trips, or some other random shit happens that could seriously fuck up the entire city and leave it looking like Chernobyl. They need to know exactly what to do in order to shut it down safely. And that's why they get paid the big bucks. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics in 2023, the median salary sits around $120K. Not bad, but this doesn't paint the full picture. The actual take-home pay is often significantly higher. And that's because power plants operate 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, which means pretty much all operators get paid overtime as well as weekend and holiday rates. And when that's factored in, it's common for experienced operators to earn anywhere from $150 to $200K a year. So how do you get this job? Fairly uniquely, because it doesn't explicitly require a college degree, but you most definitely need a lot of specific training. Most operators begin in an entry-level role, often called a non-licensed operator, and that's where you'll work physically in the plant, not in the control room. You're checking equipment, learning how machinery works, maintaining valves, and checking pipes. Basically just getting a grip of the entire place and earning $80 to $100K while doing so. If you're good at your job, the company will then pay you to go get your license. You'll spend 18 months studying nuclear physics, and then you have to pass the Nuclear Regulatory Commission exam, which is not a normal test. You'll have some federal examiner breathing down your neck, watching over your shoulder while you run a simulation of a nuclear plant meltdown. If you pass, you get the license. You move into an air-conditioned control room and your salary doubles overnight. The next career on the list is often trivialized as simply typing questions into a chatbot, but that's an inaccurate representation of AI prompt engineers. Fundamentally, they're translators. LLMs like ChatGPT, Claude, or Gemini do not think like humans. They predict text based on probability. A prompt engineer's job is to translate our complex human intent into a precise linguistic structure that forces the AI to behave reliably. So they're not just writing basic queries like most of us do on a daily basis. They're essentially designing logic puzzles that trick the AI into being smarter, safer, and less prone to hallucinations. According to a 2025 career guide by Coursera, the role often involves chain of thought prompting, which is breaking down complex tasks into logical steps that AI can follow without getting confused. So let's say a company wants an AI to review legal contracts. The prompt engineers don't just say, review this, but rather they experiment with hundreds of variations of instructions. They define the AI's persona, like you're a senior corporate lawyer. They define its constraints, like do not use colloquialisms. And they also define the output format. We want title, subheading, comment, etc. And ultimately, they're stress testing these prompts against thousands of examples to ensure that AI doesn't wig out. So on the day-to-day, their job looks like scientific testing with a bunch of iterations and improvements more than anything else. Now, how much are they getting paid? Well, seeing as we're in the AI gold rush right now, quite a lot. The most famous data point comes from the AI research lab Anthropic. In one of their job listings, they advertised a salary range of $175 to $335K per year. And it's also a field where contract freelance work is fairly lucrative as well. Recent data shows they're paying on the order of $60 to $125 an hour for specialists who can optimize workflows for specific businesses. And because this is an entirely new field, formal education for this role is completely non-existent, so the barrier to entry is entirely skill-based. The ideal candidate is someone with a kind of hybrid brain, someone who possesses the logical structure of a programmer but the linguistic nuance of a writer. For the next job on the list, we're going back out into the real world, combining the danger of height and electricity, meaning they're easily one of the highest paid tradies going around, and that's elevator installers and repairers. These guys are a hybrid tradie. They have to be part electrician for the wiring of the control boards, they're part iron worker because they're welding rails in the elevator shafts, and often even part computer technician to handle the programming and logic side of it all. Don't get it twisted though, on the day-to-day, their job can get pretty dangerous. You're often doing work inside the hoistway, which is the dark shaft the elevator moves in. And so you're usually working on a temporary platform hundreds of feet in the air. According to the Center of Construction Research and Training, the fatality rate for elevator installers is significantly higher than the average construction worker, with the leading cause of death being falling to a lower level. Kinda fucking scary. But as always, higher risk, higher reward. The median annual wage is a bit over $100K. And here's the union wage sheets showing total hourly comp being a little over $100 an hour. The only way to get the job though is through the National Elevator Industry Educational Program, a 4 to 5 year apprenticeship where you're working full time and getting paid to attend classes at night. For our next high paying job, we're moving out of elevators and into surgery theatres. Imagine you're a surgeon for a moment, and some fat lazy idiot has come in with some heart problems. Time to slice him up and fix his heart, right? Well, how are you going to do that with the stupid thing still beating? Exactly, you can't. So we've got to stop the beating. Wait, but surgery takes multiple hours, sometimes even like 20 plus hours. How do we stop a person's heart beating for this amount of time and still expect them to wake up? Great question. Enter the cardiovascular perfusionist. Definitely one of the MVPs within an operating room. They're the person who operates the heart-lung machine, also known as a bypass. That thing is quite literally your heart and lungs for the length of the surgery. It takes your blood, adds oxygen, removes carbon dioxide, and pumps it around your body so surgeons can operate on a still bloodless heart. Modern medicine is crazy. Anyways, so the cardiovascular perfusionist is running this whole thing, and similar to the nuclear reactor operator, it's usually many hours of calm boredom followed by moments of extreme terror. Because if something like a tube kinks or a pump fails, the patient has maybe 3 minutes before brain damage sets in and they either die or come out of surgery talking like Joe Biden. So super important stuff. But the real shit, let's talk money. The ROI on education here is arguably one of the best in medicine. You're getting paid doctor money without the doctor debt or the 10-year residency. For instance, to become a cardiac surgeon takes at least 14 years after high school. To become a perfusionist takes around 6. You start off with a bachelor's, usually in something science-related and most likely biology, and then you apply to a perfusion program, which is either a certificate or a master's, and these are around 2 years long. Sounds amazing. The catch is that they're highly competitive. There's only around 18 accredited schools in the US, like Vanderbilt, Texas Heart Institute, and MUSC. But once you're in, you're guaranteed a job after graduation and basically for the rest of your life. Especially if you live in the US, where having an unhealthy heart and destroying your body is basically standard practice. According to the Nebraska Medical Center, new grads will start around $138,000 a year. Mid-career, they're getting bumped up to around $175 to $200. And if you're willing to move around a little, doing locum work in areas where there's a shortage of perfusionists, you can easily be making $250K or more, as you'll be earning $200 plus an hour to fill understaffed hospitals. The next job is 100% the coolest job on the list, and it's not even close. Have you ever watched the TV show Operation Repo? A bunch of guys going around repossessing cars that people haven't made payments for in months? Well, imagine doing that for planes. Same principles apply. Some millionaire finances a jet, misses a bunch of repayments, but instead of the bank sending a letter, they send a repo agent. Unlike repossessing a Honda Civic, a Gulfstream cannot be put on the back of a tow truck and driven away. Take this guy, Nick Popovich, easily the most famous repo man in the world. He talks about 80% of the work being detective work, tracking the plane through flight logs, fuel receipts, and even Instagram pictures that stupid trust fund babies post to their Instagram. Once the jet's located, it's go time. Break into the jet, bypass security codes, jumpstart the engines, and get the fuck out of the country before the owner or local police start shooting at you. It's quite literally Grand Theft Auto shit, but legal. Obviously, there's a ton of danger involved. Popovich has been thrown in Haitian prison before, he's had to bribe airport officials to open up gates, and he's even been shot at by security guards. But again, risk versus reward. There's no real salary in this line of work. You earn a commission, usually based on the total asset value of the aircraft you're repoing. Repo a small Cessna, you may be pulling 5k. You repo a $50 million jet, and you're easily walking away with 500k to a mil. But it's important to know all expenses come out of your pocket first. You're essentially a freelancer. So if you don't get the job done, you don't get paid. If you wanted to start stealing planes like your Trevor in GTA 5, you're going to need a commercial pilot's license. And more importantly, you're going to need to be able to fly multiple types of aircraft. One day you might be flying a Boeing 747 and the next day you're flying a Learjet. You need to be across multiple aircraft. The other thing you need is a deep understanding of international aviation law. If you repo a plane in the wrong country without the right paperwork, it's not repossession, it's air piracy, and you'll probably go to prison for life. And then the other thing is you're definitely not getting a job like this through LinkedIn. You're going to have to know a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy who's willing to trust you with returning a $20 million asset. Coolest job by far though. And speaking of jobs that require lots of trust, get paid a ton, and also exist within the GTA universe, the next job on the list is being a good version of Lester, the ethical hacker. There's two types of hackers in the world, black hat hackers and white hat hackers. Black hats are the bad guys who hack into companies, often stealing data to sell or selling the exploit itself. White hats are the good guys. So companies like Google, Apple, Bank of America, whoever, all know that the black hats are constantly trying to break into their systems 24/7. And so their only defense is to hire someone to break in first and then tell them where the holes are. Hacking in the real world is nothing like hacking in the movies though. And in fact, more often than not, you're hacking a person rather than any kind of software. What does that mean? You're sending fake emails to employees, pretending to be someone high up requesting sensitive information. Or you're calling up the support team, pretending to be an angry CEO trying to trick the support agent into resetting a password. Or maybe you've just convinced some idiot to plug in a USB they found sitting on their desk. And then once you're in, you write up a 50-page report explaining exactly how you did it so the company can fix it. Two main ways hackers are making money in this world: bounties and salary. According to this salary guide, the starting range for a penetration tester is around 120 to 145k a year. The bounties are where shit gets crazy though. See, companies run these bug bounty programs. For instance, Apple offer $2 million for anyone who can hack into an iPhone without a user even touching it. And last year, Google paid out over $10 million to hackers. But think about it, they kinda have no choice. They've got to make their offer so financially appealing because there's other people out there, high-level criminals, maybe even governments, who could and would use that hack for far more destruction than $1 or $2 million. What's beautiful about this industry is that it really doesn't require a degree. The industry respects skills above all else, and sometimes certifications that can prove those skills. For instance, there's the Offensive Security Certified Professional exam, which is brutal. 24-hour practical exam. They drop you into a virtual network and say, hack every computer in here. Good luck. If you pass, you've got skills and you'll be hired by someone. But even without the certs and being hired by someone, there's teenagers on platforms like HackerOne that have turned into millionaires from their bedrooms just by hunting bug bounties. Crazy useful skill, and with our super techie world, it's hard to see demand for these guys decreasing anytime soon. Next on the list are the guys and girls responsible for getting us addicted to white monster, flavorists or flavor chemists. These guys combine a bunch of chemicals to replicate natural flavors or create entirely new ones, like sour blueberry twisties or Caesar-flavored Oreos. Interesting to know though, you'll almost never work for the food brands we actually know, like Coca-Cola, Lay's, or Nestle. Instead, you're working for the shadow industry that supplies all of them. And that industry is dominated by the big four European flavor houses, who control roughly 50 to 60% of the global market. So that means as a flavorist, you're more of a B2B contractor than anything else. For example, McDonald's wants a new strawberry milkshake or something. They don't try and invent the flavor themselves. They send a project brief to Givaudan and IFF saying, we need a strawberry flavor that tastes like jam, withstands freezing, costs less than 4 cents a serving, and is compliant with California law. The flavorists at Givaudan and IFF then compete to win the contract. Now, a lot of the time, it's even less creative than this. In fact, maybe 70% of the work is simply matching. A client sends you a competitor's product, like a popular energy drink or something, and says, clone this, I need to know everything that's in it and how we could make it cheaper. This is when you're using high-tech machinery like a GCMS machine or a gas chromatography mass spectrometry machine, whatever the hell that means. Life within the lab is also pretty interesting, especially because there's a lot of rules designed to help maintain your unbiased palate for product testing. For instance, you do your most critical testing at 9 AM each day. That's when your palate is freshest. So 9 AM on a Monday, you're spending the next 2 hours trying 30 different flavor combinations of ranch dressing. Another weird rule, you can't swallow. If you swallowed everything you tasted, you'd be ingesting way too much chemically bullshit and you'd gain 50 pounds. But hey, then you'd be one step closer to being a true American. The dietary handcuffs within the industry are what would kill me though. No coffee before 9 AM because it ruins the palate. No spicy food for lunch because it burns the tongue. No smoking or vaping ever because that permanently damages your nose. And no perfume or cologne in the office because it contaminates the air. For all this shit though, they get paid pretty well. Trainees and juniors taking home anywhere from 60 to 90k, certified flavorist around 100 to 160k, and a senior or master flavorist earns over 200k easily. But to get in is a pretty long journey. You're going to need a bachelor's in chemistry or food science, and then you've got to complete a 7-year apprenticeship under a master flavorist in order to be certified by the Society of Flavor Chemists. And so because of the rigorous certification process, there's not that many flavorists in the world. In the US, there's estimated to be less than 500. So in one sense, super cool job. And once you're in, you're in. However, let's say you get fired or lose your job. 1, it's a super tight-knit industry, so everyone knows everyone. And 2, your skills of memorizing 2,000 different chemical smells is practically useless in any other job on the planet. So yeah, do with that as you will. Finally, we dive into the last job on our list, the underwater welder. Realistically, the job title is more accurately commercial diver, where welding is just one tool in their arsenal. And that's because you're essentially an underwater construction worker. There's 2 big branches or kinds of work as a diver. You've got inland work and offshore work. Inland work is the unglamorous stuff, diving into sewage treatment plants, nuclear cooling towers, or muddy rivers with zero visibility where you're finding things by feel. The offshore work is where the money's made. You're working on oil rigs out in the Gulf of Mexico. Gulf of America, or out in the North Sea. So why do these guys get paid so much? Because of the shit that'll kill you. And I'm not talking sharks. Sharks are the least of your worries. I'm talking about delta P, the bends, and osteonecrosis. Delta P is the scariest shit. Delta in mathematics means change in, and P in this instance means pressure, so change in water pressure. If 2 bodies of water have different pressures, like a drain in a dam for instance, and you get too close, the suction locks you against the hull. If the pressure difference is high enough, it could literally pull your entire body through a 4-inch hole. Here's a safety video almost all divers have watched before. Literally crushing crab shell through a tiny crack in a pipe. Then you've got osteonecrosis. Basically, the long-term pressure destroys your bones. We weren't made for that. Many old divers have what's known as dead bone in their hips and shoulders. And finally, the bends. And this shapes their work dramatically because if you don't get it right, you die. If you come up too fast from diving, the nitrogen in your blood will turn into bubbles and it will either paralyze or instantly kill you. Wonderful. And so this is what they do to combat that and why they get paid the big bucks. To avoid getting the bends every day, they don't come up. They live in a pressurized chamber for 28 days straight. A bell drops them to the ocean floor, they work for 6 hours, and then they get pulled back up to the ship but stay inside the pressurized chamber. They even have food passed to them through a small airlock, and because of the heliox they're breathing in the entire time, which is a mixture of helium and oxygen, they're talking in a high-pitched squeaky voice literally 24/7. But the benefit to living this shitty lifestyle, you're getting paid 30 to 45k a month, or 300 to 500k annually. But you can only do it for a few years because eventually your body gives out. Anyways, that's all for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Leave a comment below if there's any specific career-related videos you want me to make. Otherwise, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.